Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Charlie Dixon, and today my guest is Vadim Dekhtyar. Vadim is a psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and licensed NLP trainer with decades of experience helping people and organizations navigate fear, stress, and transformation. He's the founder and director of the NLP Academy and has worked internationally from advising Lithuanian government officials and state television to consulting U.S. companies on personal and organizational wellness. Vadim is the author of several books, including his latest, Conquering Fear, The Path of Inner Strength, which blends neuroscience, psychology, and holistic tools to help readers break free from anxiety and reclaim their lives. His work is rooted in making deep emotional change both accessible and actionable. We're excited to welcome Vadim to the show today to explore how fear and anxiety impact our minds and bodies, and how science backed holistic tools can help us transform emotional pain into inner strength, resilience, and healing. Thank you so much for coming to the show today, Vadim. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, congratulations on the release of your book, Conquering Fear. It came out earlier this year. What led you to write this book, and why do you believe fear is such a vital topic to explore right now?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I wrote Conquering Fear for several reasons. And what inspired me was seeing how fear limits people's lives. I have worked with countless patients who were trapped by their fears, from phobias, panic attacks to general anxiety. Let me give you a real life example of how fear can limit person life. I worked with a bright, motivated high school student who was accepted by university. I even believe it was Northwestern here in Chicago, where I live. And she should have been excited, right? But she wasn't. She was trying to find the course and choose her major by one criteria, which program would let her not to stand up and present in front of class. Because in her middle school, she developed fear of public speaking. And truth is, it's very hard to find the course without presenting.
Right.
And instead of dreaming big, she was scanning catalogs with one goal: to stay invisible,
Mm.
right? Not based on her interests, passions, talents, but fear. And this is just one example of how fear can affect our life. The second reason came from broader observation. I have this my own theory that each century has its own signature emotional diagnosis.
Mm.
Like in 19th century, hysteria was a defining condition, in particularly in sensitive individuals, mostly women, and it gave rise the birth of psychoanalysis. And Sigmund Freud and his students tried to decode this mysterious condition, which was in many ways the language of suppressed emotions.
Yep.
In the 20th century, depression took the center stage.
Mm.
With all these changes in people's lives, like industrialization, urbanization, depression was the main thing. And antidepressants came, right? And
Mhm.
when Prozac was developed, we even thought that depression will be erased from our lives.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But now in 21st century, I believe we are in the age of anxiety and fear. Our world is defined by chronic uncertainty,
Mm.
information overload,
Yeah.
global crisis, wars, pandemics, technological shifts,
Mm-hmm.
and anxiety keeps us on constant alert.
Yeah.
I even read recently that Nike changing the strong slogan, just do it, to more hesitant. Why do it? To reflect younger, anxious generation. So
Interesting.
that's why I felt this book had to be written. Fear is not no longer is just personal issue. It's becoming cultural issue. And if we want to understand how it works, how it affects body, mind, it will silently shaping our health, our relationships, and our lives.
I guess I had never really thought about it like that. Each generation has its own set of psychological, mental concerns, but I completely agree with you. You know, I feel like when I was much younger, it was depression and it was everywhere. And like you said, the creation of antidepressants, and then myself included, and the lots of people around us, the levels of uncertainty and that constant on edge feeling of not being sure of what is going to happen next. It is so much happening and so much change on a daily basis. Anxiety and fear is what is crippling us today. It's very interesting. I hadn't really thought about is really how it is going.
Right?
Each generation has its thing.
And 21st century started so quietly. At least
Hmm.
in the beginning, it felt like. But I don't know. Somehow I sense that something is coming, and
Yeah,
now we live in everyday fear of what is coming. Right?
absolutely. Wow. Wow. And as I was doing some research into just your background and your experience, it is so unique. I don't know that I've ever met or spoken with another guest who is a physician, a psychotherapist, and a neuroscience researcher and professor. How do those disciplines come together in how you approach fear?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I have always believed in one principle: use whatever works. But yes, throughout my career, I explored a wide range of approaches. From Western medicine, I graduated as a medical doctor and worked in mental hospital as a psychotherapist, to traditional Chinese medicine, what I'm doing right now, from psychotherapy to NLP and hypnosis.
Mm.
And each of these discipline offers a different piece of the puzzle when it comes to fear. But yeah, from neuroscience, for example, we understand what's going on in our brain when we are afraid. There is a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala,
Mm.
which acts as an internal alarm system. And when it senses danger, even when it's imagined, it triggers body response, what we know as a fight or flight response. It's why your heart pumping, your stomach tightens before a big event. But I always thought that just understanding it's not enough. We need to have practical tools to help people living through or experiencing
Mhm.
fear. And it's why I try to collect all these puzzles, from psychotherapy to, for example, NLP, which offers powerful tools, anchoring, submodalities change, or hypnosis, or let's say breathing exercises from Eastern traditions, which can help to calm uh, from panicking to relax in just a minute. So to me, it's all connected. The body reacts, mind interprets, brain remember. Our approach must address all angles. It's why I think, yes, my experience in some way unique, but it's why it works.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in my own personal and even professional experience, sometimes talk therapy can leave some things with, like you said, without those practical tools to use on a daily basis or when you need them. Sometimes a talk therapy doesn't necessarily always hit that mark, and there might be a need for other types of therapy and tools to
Right. It's
use. Yeah.
why I like Chinese medicine, acupuncture, even the idea of that through inserting needles, we removing these blockages. Because from Eastern medicine point of view, problems come when something blocking free flow of energy, and emotions. It's one of the major factors which can block this free flow of energy. And this combination of talk therapy, right, and for example acupuncture, it's a great combination, helping people with anxieties and fears and with many other problems.
Got you. And not to go too far off topic, but a friend of mine actually mentioned to me yesterday. We were talking about anxiety and things that worked for us and didn't. And she was mentioning acupuncture and how she just feels so different and not so, nervous and on edge all the time and worrying about everything because she goes in and does acupuncture once a week. And so it's very interesting that you're saying this exact same thing today. Not to say that talk therapy does not have its place. That's not what I mean at all. But that many times coupling it with some other tool is very helpful for people.
Yeah, and probably the main idea, this integration,
Mm,
it's what helps, because what we see unfortunately in Western medicine right now, it's disintegration, right? Different specialists try to take the piece of the body or of the patient, and they not always care about what other part or other specialists think, and how it's related to each other.
absolutely. Absolutely. So that kind of leads me to my next point. You mentioned fear and anxiety, and I think a lot of people use those terms a bit interchangeably, but I do believe that they are different. Can you explain to us how they differ and how that difference can empower people to respond differently to just the words fear or the word anxiety?
Yeah, it's actually very important distinction, even as you mentioned, that it can feel basically exactly the same, fear or anxiety. And let's start with this. There is such thing as a healthy fear. So fear is not the enemy. It's the emotion, and it's vital emotion. It's very important. It's basically the reason we survived as a species.
Hmm.
And fear gives us important information about present moment, what's going on around us, and if it's dangerous or threatening, we need to respond. We can say that it's the way how body communicate with our mind, telling that just pay attention, it's something
Yeah.
is going on. But not all fear are healthy, and it's why we have phobias, right? And phobias, it's learned experience, and it's painful experience. For example, somebody who once got stuck in an elevator can develop claustrophobia, and even thought about getting to elevator can create panic attack, right?
Mhm.
And phobias, it's example of irrational fear. I can give you an example. I worked with woman with claustrophobia. It's fear of closed space, right? And in the beginning, she was asking to leave my office door open to feel safer. Then, when we progressed and she agreed to work with closed door closed, she still was asking me to leave at least window open. And I have so small window in my office that she still couldn't escape, but she's still safer to have at least the window open. So it's phobias. And then we have anxiety. And anxiety is different because it's not about something happening now. It's about the future, about what could go wrong. It's our mind projecting something that hasn't happened yet and maybe never would happen. But
Mhm.
it's this projection of negativity into the future. And I often draw a timeline for my patients. Fear lives in the present moment. Phobias are tied to the past, and anxiety is always about the future. And even understanding these differences help people to understand better what's going on with them. And what is interesting, even neurologically, different part of the brain involved. As I mentioned, amygdala, and the part which is responsible for immediate fear. It activates this fight or flight reaction. But for anxiety, it's our prefrontal cortex responsible for anxiety. And it's the same area which we use for to plan, to imagine, to predict. It's like our ability to look in the future, and we are paying ultimate price for that,
Mhm.
worrying.
Mhm.
And it's only us, human being, has this ability.
Yeah.
No one, no wolves or lions or even your cat are not sitting and thinking what they're gonna eat tomorrow. Animal don't have an anxiety. What's gonna happen if your cat not getting her food on time? All right. So by learning to recognize when we are imagining, we gain control because we can change scenarios in our head, and it
Mhm.
changes our physiology, and that's empowering part.
Absolutely. 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 So, I mean, it really sounds almost like our emotions are kind of like messengers, right? So they are sending
Yeah.
messages, like you said, they're sending messages to our brains on how to respond, how to act. And when we ignore them, I'm again speaking from experience here, when we ignore those feelings, those thoughts, they get louder and they keep screaming at us to do something about them. How would you say then that fear shows up in our bodies when it's left unaddressed? How do we know?
Yeah, it's such an important question because fear is not just in our head, it's a full body neurological response.
Right.
And when what you said, we are not responding, when we don't acknowledge it, it doesn't go away, it goes deeper, and it starts to affect our body, our muscles, our breathing, our heart,
Mhm. Yep.
and it starts to speak through symptoms. And some the most common fear related symptoms, it would be muscle tension, and it's usually upper part, neck, shoulders, chest, and there is a phenomena called turtle neck, and it usually combination of muscle tension, muscle pain, and headaches. And it's the mechanism. It's exactly the same. When we live for a long time in a fear, we are reflexively trying to draw our neck into shoulders, like turtle do. But unfortunately, we don't have the ability to hide our head, and it's remains pressed to now our shoulders and creates this muscle spasm and headaches. But then it could be shortness of breath, tightness, heaviness in the chest, elevated heart rate, insomnia, digestive problems, compromised immune system, so whole variety of symptoms. I can give you an example from the book. And in the book, I'm telling the story of Max, a man in his 30s who came to see me with persistent chest pain. I remember he was pointing to his chest and was saying, it hurts, it hurts. And before coming to see me, he had already was seen by numerous doctors, internal medicine, cardiologist, pulmonologist, even gastroenterologist, and undergone countless tests.
Mm-hmm.
And all tests came back normal. And they basically told him that they didn't find anything medically and dismissed him as a patient. And at first he was pleased that all tests were normal, but he still experienced this pain, and it's why he came to see me. But he was very skeptical how I, with this talking after all this specialist, can help him with his pain. But when he came, I noticed immediately how rigid his muscle were, especially his chest, neck, and he was very athletic and fit. He worked as a personal trainer in gym, but his muscles told me the different story immediately. The constant tension, and it's internal tension. And when we start talking, and I asked him directly, "Do you feel this tension?" And he said no. And then I was surprised. Then I realized that the most of the time he lived in his head, not paying attention what's going on in his body. And in his head, he was criticizing himself harshly. I don't know if he would tell the same thing what he was telling himself out loud to somebody else, he probably could be arrested. So
Wow.
I taught him simple relaxation exercise and gave him homework to do this exercises, relaxation exercises, and start writing down, start noticing and writing down his internal dialogue. And when he came next time, I almost didn't recognize him. He took his homework very seriously, as probably as a physical exercises. So he did relaxation exercises twice a day. He started diary, writing down all his internal dialogue, and it helped him tremendously. So basically, what the main idea from this story, when we're not noticing what's going on in our body, this fear or our emotions start to present through the symptoms, through the body.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Absolutely agree with that. And you mentioned something that he stayed, or your patient, that he stayed in this state, and he stayed within his head, and he just kept thinking about these things. Is there, I don't know if you want to call it, I think your book mentions that it's an emotional thermometer, or a way to understand and regulate that internal state. Like, how do people do that? It is not something that, in the States anyway, I don't know that we're taught to how to regulate our emotions internally, or even to recognize them and what our body is showing to us and telling us. So is there a way to teach ourselves that?
Yeah, sure. So what you mentioned, this thermometer of emotion, the simple tool I developed or maybe modified because it's so simple idea. It's a self-awareness tool which I use a lot with my patients, and it helps to notice what's going on in the body, and it helps to start noticing your internal state on a scale from calm to overwhelmed before those emotions turn to physical symptoms. And we can do it right now. It's pretty simple exercise. And of course, our listener can follow us, but with one exception, because I will ask you to close your eyes if you driving or operating machinery, so you can do it later. But if you feel safe, just to pause, relax, and close your eyes, you can follow us. So,
Okay.
and just imagine thermometer, like thermometer we use to measure temperature, but
Okay.
probably 10 times bigger in front of you. And this thermometer will have a different scale from 0 to 10, and it, uh, it will have different colors, this scale. And from bottom to up, first is green zone, let's say from 0 to 3. And it's where you are experiencing, let's say, healthy tension. It's your alertness, your muscle tone. It's what helps you to wake up in the morning. So it's a healthy portion. From 3 to 5, it's a yellow zone. And it's where anxiety starts to creep in. And it's unfortunately, it's usually people don't notice this part. And then from 5 to 8, it's the orange zone. It's where you begin to feel symptoms, muscle pain, hypertension, headache. And then from 8 to 10, it's red zone. It's emergency situations, panic attacks, hypertension crisis, headaches, and so on. So just imagine this scale from 0 to 10. And now try to pay attention to your body and try to notice all muscle tension. If you're actually experiencing some anxiety level, try to pay attention to noticing. And imagine where you on this scale from 0 to 10 on this thermometer. Is it healthy green zone? Is it yellow zone, orange? I hope not red. So just come up with the number and you can open your eyes, and if you're ready to share, tell your number. If not, I just will comment how to use it.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Most of us spend more time at work than anywhere else doing anything else. So why not spend that time in a job you love? Introducing Triad's Jobs Marketplace, the only job site dedicated specifically to behavioral and mental health professionals. Featuring more than 1,000 open jobs from dozens of behavioral and mental health employers, and searchable by location, professional field, employment type, specialization, and more. Jobs Marketplace helps you find your next career opportunity. Full-time, part-time, or gig time, make the most of your time. To access Jobs Marketplace, register for your free professional account at hellotriad.com/BHT. That's hellotriad.com/BHT, and then click to Jobs Marketplace. If you're already a member of the Triad community, visit app.hellotriad.com/jobs. That's app.hellotriad.com/jobs. Visit us today and take your next career step tomorrow.
Yes. So first of all, I can really imagine it. So thank you for that visual. And I will say I'm probably at like a 4, having some neck tension that I've
So
explained away. But yeah, we'll say 4.
it's what I call the probably the most dangerous
Mm.
portion, because it's yellow zone. It's when we're already in some tension and constant probably tension, but we are not paying attention to it. And it's
Mhm.
the root of all some psychosomatic diseases, right? Because
Mm.
people unfortunately can live not even for months, but for years in this yellow zone when
Yeah.
they just not noticing, not paying attention what's going on in their bodies. And
Absolutely.
so it's very important to start noticing. And I encourage people to start checking and asking yourself where I am on my emotional thermometer right now. And as soon as you wake up in the morning, take a
Mhm.
moment and notice how I'm starting my day. What the first thought, feeling, or tension in my body. And then when you move through the day, again, pause and ask the same question, where I'm on my emotional thermometer, and try to notice what events or interactions, and probably the most important, with whom, raises your anxiety level. And of course, the key is consistency, because by it's our choice, by choosing to start noticing, to pause, to work with our emotions instead of being ruled by them, you begin to reclaim your power. So it's a little tool which can help you tremendously, at least to start noticing what's going on in your body.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And so for those of us who are in that yellow zone or are starting to notice some physical, ailments or symptoms of, fear, anxiety, I know that your book provides some real practices for managing that. Can you share one that listeners might be able to try today?
Oh yes, of course. It's actually, as I said, the first step, it's always to start noticing, right? Because
Absolutely. Yeah.
we can't manage what we can't measure.
Absolutely.
So it's and then we have choice what to do, from breathing exercises, relaxation, and whole variety. But yeah, I will give you. I often teach people how to communicate with their brains, because our brains store experiences using different sensory qualities: visual, auditory, sensory. And when we feel fear, we are often creating vivid, colorful, close up internal image or even movie of what scares us, right? And a simple technique could be, it's to take that scary mental image and make it smaller, push it away to make it black and white, and put border around, frame around. And even this simple changes, what an NLP calls some modalities change, because it's sub modalities of our experience can dramatically reduce emotional impact. So, and it's not just trick, it's based on how our brains actually process information. So just our listeners can try it to, first of all, it's
Interesting.
very important to start noticing what's going on inside our heads, what images we are creating, how we scare ourselves, because it's also habit. Some people, great movie directors, but for some reason they choose to create horror movies, and then they're surprised why they feel scared, right? So the simplest way, just to start noticing our internal theater and internal screen, and what's going on this screen. And then it's your head. You can do whatever you want with with your images or voices or your internal dialogue. You just need to have some tools how to do that.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for that. I enjoy the idea of reframing things that you've kind of, like you said, scared yourself with. So being able to like put it in that box, make it smaller and push it further away
Right.
is something that is doesn't necessarily take anything to do, just a moment to sit with your brain and absolutely being aware of how your body is feeling, aware of those emotions has got to be the first step, because again, you cannot manage what you don't acknowledge.
Right. Just again, start to notice what images in your head helps you to feel better, and which images scares you, and then make a choice to what screen you're choosing and what images you're choosing.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And so when you mentioned the brain, it took me to another a point that I wanted to make sure I brought up. is that you do talk about in your book how, and you just mentioned it here as well, how your brain functions and how sometimes your brain may not be able to distinguish between real and imagined threats. So these things that we've kind of scared ourselves with, or created a level of fear or anxiety of thinking about what may happen, and it might not actually be anything negative. We don't know. So what is really going on neurologically, during those times of anxiety and panic, other than we've just kind of created this story that it's going to go bad?
Yeah, first of all, the brain is actually doesn't distinguish well between real fear and imaginary fear, and it's it's evolutionary great reaction and body respond when it's applied to actual fear, but when it's something we just imagine, it's whole different story. And I remember I worked with a young patient of mine who survived car accident. It was supposed to be a joyful family vacation. The whole family went to see ocean for first time, but instead they ended up in the hospital.
Mm.
Thankfully, they everyone survived, but the trauma left a deep imprint. And after accident, she couldn't get into a car. Just an idea of getting to a car would trigger full-blown panic attack. And she described it perfectly. She said, as soon as I starting to imagine getting into the car, I find myself in overturned car again, and my heart's starting to pound. I'm starting to sweat, and I'm completely losing control over what is happening. So it's an example of brain relieving the trauma in real time. Even
Mhm.
she's sitting safely in my office, and just the body goes into survival mode, and amygdala does what it's supposed to do, and it's the loop of anxiety: imaginary threat, real fear symptoms,
Mhm.
physical symptoms, and it creates even more fear. And unless we interrupt that cycle, it reinforces itself. It, it's why it's very important for people to understand that it's the brain reaction of to the memories or to the imagination. And it's not what is happening right now. And then in this way, it helps to interrupt this cycle.
Nice. Right. Okay. And so I suppose that you deal with a lot of clients and patients that are ready to move past these feelings of anxiety and of fear. But I know that there are some people that might be resistant to change. There always is. So how
Yes.
can those types of people who aren't ready to manage those symptoms, aren't ready to be aware of them even, how can they begin to kind of loosen that tight hold to, because in some ways fear and anxiety, you know what to expect, right? You feel like the anxiety teaches you to be aware, to make yourself feel safe, right? You give this illusion of safety. And so how do you help people move past that needing to feel anxious to, to be able to move forward?
In my book, I introduce 5-step strategy how to deal with fear. And the first step is what we already discussed. It's always acknowledging. It's what I call to look your fear in the face,
Absolutely.
because and it requires some courage to acknowledge that I'm experiencing this emotion or
Absolutely.
fear. But without it, and you're right, we allow fear to destroy the body from within, and sometimes our beliefs prevent us to move forward. But
Yep.
at least giving people tool helps them to understand where they are right now and how to make this to right steps. And the second step It's a communication with fear, because again, I'm coming back to this idea that fear is just a messenger, and there are ways to communicate with this messenger and get this message, because until we understand what any emotion tries to provide, what kind of information, we are stuck, and this messenger will be coming again and again and knocking louder and louder. So we need to understand what fear tries to tell us, and it's a very important step. And then we need to make a plan of action. And what is important, this plan supposed to be bigger just than just to get rid of the fear, because fear prevent us of achieving something, right? So this goal, the plan should be bigger, building confidence or improving relationship or pursuing your goal. So it's very important. And next step, put the plan in the practice. And I always emphasize that this step should include self-care. You need to learn to take care of yourself physically, starting from eating right, exercising, sleeping, getting enough rest, because it's all helps to reduce fear grip on you. Doing relaxation exercises, mindfulness. So it's very important. And the last but very important step, it's change the way you think, and that's very important step, because it's you need to learn to be your own captain, right, of your bus or your car or whatever, and to take responsibility to what is going on in your life. Otherwise, you always will be a victim, and you will be part of somebody else's play. So this is my 5-step strategy of overcoming any fear.
Nice. Nice. Thank you. And so earlier we were discussing how we aren't necessarily taught to be emotionally aware or even self-aware of how emotions or our feelings show up in our bodies or how we respond to fear or acknowledging fear even. And as a parent, I often struggle with how do I teach my children emotional awareness? How do I teach them to recognize how they're feeling? How do I teach them that that stomach ache that you have all of a sudden when school starts isn't because your stomach really hurts, but maybe you're nervous about, school happening and what might happen at this new school that you're going to. And I know that your book also speaks to parents and kind of helping guide children through this fear. What is one way that adults can begin to model or even explain emotional awareness to kids?
Yeah, thank you for that question. This is such an important question,
It is.
because children don't learn emotional awareness from definitions. They learn it from how we as adults or parents respond to their fear. And in the book, I give parents a practical guide. And it starts with one key principle: respect the fear, even if it seems irrational. When we say that's nonsense, or you are a big boy or big girl, we are unintentionally teaching kids that fear should be hidden. But instead, you need to create a safe environment, ask gentle questions about how it feels, or even what we discussed, how it looks like, how it sounds like. The earlier you notice fear, the easier it is to transform it. But you must start with respect. And one of my favorite tools, what I also teach parents, it is storytelling. Start reading books, or even better, to tell stories to your kids. I remember when we mm, just moved to the United States, and my daughter was adjusting to a new country, new friends, new school, new language. She came one day and she felt like she doesn't belong. And I started telling her story every night, the tale of the brave frog. And in this story, a little frog was swept away together with whole family by a storm and land in a strange swamp where everything was familiar, similar, but slightly different.
Mhm.
The frogs they are cracked differently. The food smelled slightly different. Everything looked slightly different. And just like my daughter frog had to navigate the unknown. And each night, little frog grew braver, and each day she did too. Also, can use techniques like drawing, just to ask kid to draw this fear and make a silly cartoon, or giving kids magic flashlight to chase away the monsters.
Mhm.
And it's not just distractions, it's could be symbolic tools that give children control over the internal world.
Got you. Thank you for those practical strategies because I do believe as a parents, the first thing we want to do is like, oh no, it's fine, you're fine, this is fine, everything is fine, and not always acknowledge that fear. So I do completely agree that we should teach our children to respect it, to acknowledge that it's there and how it is affecting us before we can figure out how to manage our emotions around it. For
And
sure.
yes, we need to use kids' great imagination. It's how they
Mhm.
create fears, and it's how it could be healed. Just
Absolutely.
using their language, and it's mostly language of imagination.
Got you. Thank you. Thank you. One thing that I'm noticing, especially here in the last few years, is that fear of the unknown or fear of what we think we know is and can be used to control people, especially those in leadership or in media or relationships even. How can we become more aware of when fear is being manipulated externally, not just internally, but when it is used as a tool against you?
Yes, and this is one of the most subtle and dangerous forms of fear, engineered fear. And in my book, I explore how politicians, marketers, but unfortunately, and the loved ones sometimes manipulate fear to maintain control. And it usually goes like, if you don't listen to me, something bad will
Yes.
happen. And even that message bypasses logic and goes directly to limbic brain.
Mhm.
And we all know that fear is oldest tool of manipulation. And in the book, I explore how fears has been used throughout history to manipulate entire populations,
Yeah.
whether we are talking about the witch hunts of 17th century Europe, almost recent events shaped by political or media driven narratives. Fear has been repeatedly used to create alternative realities. And it's basically when logic breaks down and people begin to surrender control in exchange of safety. And it's base foundation of mass fear. And mass fear, it's also very interesting and dangerous phenomena. Or
Mhm.
it's like epidemic of insanity that occurs when a large group of people lose touch with actual reality and descend into constructed one. And yes, we live in a dangerous time. And what
Yeah.
makes it especially dangerous is how easily fear can be engineered.
Mhm.
With the rise of social media,
Yeah.
it takes just a few images,
Yeah.
headlines, or manipulated narratives to trigger widespread panic. And I can give you a model how it works. First, threat is introduced, real or exaggerated, right? Then panic rises. And then comes interesting part. It comes brief relief phase, a full sense of calm.
Mhm.
And just when nervous system starts to calm down, the threat escalates again, creating a deeper dependency on the external source. And this swinging of emotional states breaks down individual critical thinking and creating what we call crowd phenomena, which also interesting from neuroscience point of view, because we have this mirror neurons, right? Which a system that allows us to feel empathy on individual level. But same system, mirror neurons, creates this crowd phenomena because they amplify the dominant emotion in the group. So when in the group one person starts to feel fear, it spreads like infection and becomes the dominant emotion of the whole group.
Mhm.
So what we can do to protect ourselves, we need to learn to pause and start asking ourselves questions. It's like Albert Einstein said once, question everything.
Mhm.
Am I reacting out of my own direct experience, or
Mhm.
I'm part of the somebody else framing? Is this fear helping me make better decision, or it makes me easier to control by somebody? So more often we'll pause and look inside and try to understand what's best for ourselves. It's basically it's the only way to prevent this spreading of mass emotions in the mass. And we need to learn to reclaim what fear seeks to steal our agency.
Mhm. Absolutely. Pushing everything. Okay. So where can listeners learn more about conquering fear? I want to I wish we had more time to chat about this because I'm very interested in your thoughts about all of this. So where can listeners learn more about conquering fear and how can they connect with your work?
Yeah, I maybe start with the second part. If somebody want to learn more about me, they can find me on what I do on the website lifebalanceclinic.com, lifebalanceclinic.com. About the book Conquering Fear, The Path of Inner Strength. It's available on Amazon. And I really believe this book belongs to every home because every family faces moments of stress, uncertainty, self doubt, and having these practical tools to navigate through such time can make all the difference. And again, fear is not the enemy, it's a signal. And learning about how to read this signal will help our listeners and anybody living with greater freedom and joy.
Awesome. Awesome. I really appreciate you speaking with us today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so very much.
And thank you to our listeners for taking the time to join us. You can follow us on our social media at Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and even on YouTube at Behavioral Health Today. We know you like our show, so make sure to give us 5 stars and leave us a review. As always, the resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.